Yes, welcome to our fourth session of the conference, Turkish Literature as a Political Platform. I welcome three speakers. The first will be Professor Giorgos Michalakopoulos from Ionian University of Corfu in Greece. Then we will have a talk of Dr. Bahanur Garan Gökşen from Istanbul Adel University. And in the end, we will have Professor Erol Köroğlu of Boğaziçi University in Istanbul. We start with Professor Michalakopoulos. As far as I understood now from what you said, you will also speak a little bit about translations. He has the title, his talk has the title On the Threshold of Two Eras, the Imprint of the 1980 Military Coup on the Characters of Orhan Pamuk's Silent House, comparing the original text to its Greek translation. Professor Michalakopoulos, to introduce him shortly, is an associate professor at the Department of Foreign Languages Translation and Interpretation of the Ionian University, and he holds a master and doctorate degree related to Middle Eastern and Turkish issues. So he is an ideal speaker for this conference. So one of his favorite subjects, I think, is also Bilge Karasu, as he has several publications on this interesting author. So let's start with your presentation, dear Professor Michalakopoulos.
First of all, I want to thank you for your kind words. But I'm the second level ideal for this kind of conference. The first level are the Turkish-speaking people here. Of course, a lot of eminent professors like Hoca Köroğlu. Anyway, and the Karasu, this is a big subject, and unfortunately in Turkey, he's not very well known, although he's very, very, very special. Okay, may I add something to the discussion that was made before about being difficult to getting translated into English and all these things? May I add a thought? Thank you. I think that literature and its translations can be served in today's times through and at least at the level of publicity, through the TV series, through movies and documentaries. Why? Because one can have simultaneously three things: the oral and hearing part and the written part. So I think in terms of publicity, as far as a country or a nation is producing a lot of things like that, maybe can produce more literary translations, maybe. I think it's, it's like teaching a language. When you see a TV series and you hear the language, and then you have the option with the subtitles to see the Turkish language, for instance. So it's like teaching a language. And then maybe the one who sees the TV series go buy a book, maybe. And then probably.
May I ask a short question to Ahmed? Can we change the screen? I think Professor Michalakopoulos should be in the picture. Yeah, now.
So let me, I want to share, okay? Okay. So, first of all, thank you for the invitation, dear colleagues from the University of Cyprus. I will try to give a different perspective for dealing with literary works. And the Silent House, or CC's, offer us a good stepping stone because it's a novel full of images, sentiments, and facts, allowing for the application of this new perspective I want to talk about. Although it's not new, but okay. So please be patient because my presentation is formed by 3 steps, as you can see here, which are interconnected to each other. So let me begin now. Part 1. Ahmet Kuyaş, in his contribution to the book Orhan Pamuk'u Anlamak, writes that Orhan Pamuk in Sessiz Ev not only did he manage to make Turkish society fit into a house, but also make an almost a century-long part of our history fit into a book. Also, in another interview on Pamuk, in a website, hayatsorgusu.com, the journalist points rightly concerning Sessiz Ev to the bankruptcy of individual beliefs and to the unchangeable destiny of humans that are not happy with themselves. And then the journalist reminds us what Murat Gülsoy has written. The dream about Sessiz Ev characters. The dream to become someone else can be easily transformed into the anxiety of not being one's self. However, the plot of the novel Sessiz Ev covers a week's time in Cennethisar, Cennet, okay, remember this name, that is a part of Gebze, just before the 1980 military coup. Persons of different ideologies and idiosyncrasies coexist in a scenery set by an old mansion and the surrounding area. The underlying theme that connects them all in a tense and sometimes violent manner is the clash between East and West and the search for one's identity. The main poles around which all the characters and issues revolve are some like a planetary system. This can be an allegory depicting Turkish in that time, fragmented political, social, and cultural landscapes. And this is exactly what he's trying to express with this image by Pamuk, expressing the bad communication between the political, the social, and the cultural spheres, and of the conflict between a rational Jacobin modernization, that is Westernization, and the conservative traditional culture. And the symbolic place for all this taking place is an old mansion and the people in the surrounding area. Now, let's pass to the second step. What are the novel's main constituent parts that relate to this thing that I call design? That is, combining literature with social semiotics and with discourse analysis. This is what I call a design. Now, let me talk about, firstly, the character part. Salatin Bey is a lonely and unhappy character who is addicted to scientific facts and who believes that he can save the whole society by writing an encyclopedia. But it's important to state that Salatin Bey was a doctor from the Harbiye, the Ottoman Empire's medical school, which was one of the most receptive environments for the positivist and the modern ideas coming from the West, and especially France. The second character is his wife, Fatma Hanum, or called in the novel Buyukanum or Buyukane, which is unhappy with her condition, as is her husband. However, unlike Salatin Bey, he wants to go back to the past and live only with her own life because she feels uncomfortable with the rapidly changing world and the things that she has to do. In the face of her husband's oppressive attitude, she locks herself up in her own world, but she does not back down from her own beliefs. What is important to say is that Fatma Hanum's inner cries grip the reader. She hates so much her way of life and the environment she is living in that let her anger rip on Recep. Recep. I will talk about him later. The only person to whom she can vent her anger, perhaps because her husband considers him his illegitimate son as the fruit of westernization. Third person is Farooq, the grandson of Salatin and Fatma, from whom the author speaks, who is an associate professor of history at a university, who has no dreams of changing the world, and he's not happy with his life. However, he believes that engaging in history is the key to happiness. Then we see Metin, who wants to be famous and rich in order to escape from whatever he thinks as oppressive. Him and Nilgün, his sister, play an important role in the novel, representing the dilemmas of the youth generation of Turkey as the country was running up to the September 12, 1980 military coup. Then we have Nilgün, who represents the silent revolution, but at the same time represents the pessimism regarding the changes that can be done in this world. Then we have Recep, the illegitimate son of Salatin Bey, who is a dwarf. Recep is a dwarf and a laughingstock for others. As a result, he chooses to live quietly. However, in the novel, one constantly realizes that he wants to shout against the bad things that he has experienced. And then we have Hassan, who considers himself an outcast of society because his family is poor. He does not do well in school because he believes that school will not improve his situation. And he tries to gain a place in society, but also society's respect, by joining a group of supranationalists, ülkücü. So, what we see, that the coexistence of these individuals focuses on a central point, the search for identity. And this search is unfolding like a story of misery woven into a historical canvas. And by saying historical canvas, I'm referring to an array of facts that was taking place from the end of 60s until just before the 1980 military coup, like the influence of the May 1968 riots in France, like the ambience that was created from the 1961 constitution, like the military law on December 1979, and things like that. It is worth mentioning that the main behavior qualifying the novel's main characters corresponds to the image of society just before the 1980 military coup. And according to Murat Belge, during the period that began on 12th of September, many people kept a distance of indifference and despair for the general problems. In other words, the people was not interested in the group, but in themselves by focusing to their personal life and desires. So, what do we see here? we will see that a constant stress is conveyed to the reader, and that the reference is made to existential stress, which arises as a result of the loss for the meaning of life and the continually searching for one's identity. Now, let's move to another stepping stone, and now I'm trying to explain why combining literature with social semiotics and discourse analysis in very few words. Despite a seeming cohesion that unites the novel's main characters, yet they all speak a different language. No one is trying to communicate with each other. Selahattin Bey with Fatma Hanım, Fatma Hanım with Recep, Fatma Hanım with her grandchildren. And this leads to a bad communication, which is transformed into silence, a very good metaphor. A distinct example of this is what Faruk stated. Then I thought in despair, there is no way for someone to communicate history, just like life, with words. And this is what I'm trying to achieve. That is, to dissolve the silence and dive into what is called speaker meaning. Roughly, what the speaker intends to convey to a hearer when uttering the speaker a given sentence on a particular occasion. This is very important. Particular occasion, a given sentence. So let me give some fundamentals. I mean, if I may make a joke, it's fundamentally fundamentals, because I can say a lot of things about this. What is social semiotics? The theory that I'm using come closer to the cultural elements hidden in the novel, and I'm trying to reach them through the social semiotics, which connects meaning and communication, during which this procedure, the semiotic resources serve particular social needs, and we can see why, required in a given social context. If you want, social semiotics is a theory used to account for meaning making, in social environments and social interactions. The reason for choosing this theory has to do firstly because it is undeniable that Pamuk wanted to mediate his message by depicting the social context in which this novel is taking place, and secondly, because it is incontestable that there is a link between the main character's practices with the symbolic meanings that reflect its character's cultural background and or tradition. On the other hand, I had to use a method. So this method was Norman Fairclough's critical discourse analysis that focuses on three things on a first level. Discourse is text analysis, discourse practice analysis, and then analysis of the discourse social practice. And exactly the last one is my focus, and because, as Fairclough writes here on the left, language has three main social characteristics. Language is a part of society. Language is a social process. Language is a socially conditioned process. So we can see very well all three things served very well by our novel. Now, I give you here just a small part of a table which was made with the help of a special software, which is free anyway, Antkonk it's called. The name is Antkonk. And I was trying to place the cultural and the communicative events together, so to approach the meaning and the meaning that Pamuk wanted to share with us. And as you can see on the left hand is the Turkish, not word, but it's the Turkish root. Let's say that's why there is this asterisk. It's a root. And then what I have found in the Greek translation, and then I was trying to give just a very general meaning. And why that? Because if you take these meanings in English from the top down, you can, okay, and use some fantasy, you can create a sentence. And sentence giving us the general message communicating to us. In a time of fear, there is the class of the old versus the new, and the communist. And it's very important to say here that does not refer to leftists, it's always communists. The communists are the danger, and the East, which is our tradition, and the action, we have to take action and endure and feel. And you see that this the West, I mean, referring to the West, is coming not so close to the East thing. Maybe meaning that Pamuk was focusing mainly on the Eastern thing of things than of the Western things, or the Western part of the things. So, having this in mind, let me, and please look at what I write here on the left. This text analysis, we look for patterns, and we don't, and I say that again, we don't want to substitute for any other approach or any other knowledge on any other subject. This is patterns. Patterns upon which we can discuss, or patterns that can create some thoughts. That is all. Now, some thoughts just for concluding. The narration in Orhan Pamuk's Sessiz Ev, and like many works of his, is conducted in the context in a context of fiction writing. It stands firm. I mean, it stands firm on the ground. I mean, in facts, and at the same time, it deals with antithetical things: old versus new, East versus West, nationalist versus revolutionary. Indeed, one can say that almost all characters hold a particular place within this East-West conflict, or the ideological wars that represent the basis of the plot. As depicted in the keywords table, or we can see it again if you want, there is a hidden agreement between the two translations, because words like fear, old, new, communist, East, not so much for West, endure or rely on, soul, free, freedom, come together in both translations. And this shows undoubtedly that the atmosphere of distress, conflict, and dreaming was transferred to the Greek translation. Although there is one aspect that it struck me, it's that in the Greek translation, the translator, which knows Turkish very, very well because his mother tongue, his Greek from Istanbul, he never mentioned the ülkücü. He combines the ülkücüler with the nationalists. Okay, in my opinion, this had to be done anyway. We have this keyword table, and keeping always in mind what Fairclough about the social aspect of a language had said, I may firstly say that my analysis was context-driven, so that the nature and the types of the messages to be perceivable. Secondly, the compilation of this keyword table that you saw was focused on their ability, of the keywords ability, to fit better to the nature of the messages transmitted via the text, and then, thirdly, is done intentionally by someone. I mean, the messages transmitted had to be done intentionally by someone under specific conditions so as to transfer a specific message. Now let's come to the answer of the political thing. Likewise, Pamuk has set the difference between a political novel and a novel that is politicized. In other words, either a writer holds a political stance by speaking the language of a specific social or political group, or the writer is using a modernist conception in order to express his thoughts. In his words, he said, the novel is saved from acting as a mirror of the reality and from carrying the weight of transmitting the social and political reality. And Pamuk is politicizing his novel by making a distinction from the so-called generally accepted norms and so on, because, as he says, Yilmaz, he wanted with Sessiz Ev to make his own identity to be reflected together with the kind of world that is required by this identity. He wants to show the reflection of a world that requires an identity being specific for us, says Yilmaz, I mean the Turks, and bringing out the traditions and norms that establish this world. I believe that most novels are political in their inherent way as far as their subject is concerned. And if someone wants to examine the Sessiz Ev as a political novel regarding its subject, then let's see what Pamuk said when he compared Sessiz Ev to Kar, to another very famous novel. In Kar, like Sessiz Ev, modernity argues with the past. Modernity argues with the tradition. It also argues with politics, and together with political thinking, there exists a violent despair. And then I will finish with two things. The involvement of politics in almost everything is openly given by Pamuk in Sessiz Ev through the words that Nilgün whispered to Recep's ear before she dies. In every place, this. It does not let go no one, wherever he goes. What? Politics. I think it's the best answer given by Pamuk, that politics is everywhere. And just for making fun, I will show you this. This cover struck me. Why? You see, there is the sign that Janet is here, there, and the person trying to go away from the Janet. Why is that? I don't have an answer, but this struck me, this cover. Thank you very much, and I'm open to whatever you want to ask me about the table.